All right, let's get right to it. So here we have some shapes, and before I talked about resizing shapes, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So here I have a square, and let's say I want to change it into a different proportion, some sort of triangle. So I click and drag. I can do the sides, the top, or the corners. But let's say I made it the perfect rectangle like this, and now I want to keep those proportions, but I want to make it bigger. So to do that, what I do is same thing, except I hold shift while I do it. So I'm holding shift and I drag, and you can see it's expanding, but it's expanding from the center. Whereas if I were to say drag this corner, it's expanding, retaining proportion, but it's expanding from the top left corner. So that's really handy. And if there's one that you know you'll never want to change the proportion, you can go over here in the top right, there's this little lock logo. If you click on that, this will constrain the proportion, and you don't have to hold the shift key in order to do that. In fact, when you place a square or a circle, like a perfect square or a perfect circle, then it will actually automatically lock that proportion. So keep that in mind. It also does that with images, which we'll talk about later. All right, so now I'm going to talk about editing. So I showed you the vector tool, before. So a vector can be made into a closed vector, which is actually pretty much the same thing as a shape. It's just your own kind of free-form version. So once I place a vector, I might want to change it though. So what I can do is double-click, and here you can see the corners, the points that I placed in the vector. So I can grab one point and I can change that. So now I just turn this thing into almost triangular. Or, I might even want to delete a point, which I just did. I pressed delete on that point. Now it's a triangle. That's really cool. So here's the thing. A vector, a closed vector, is the same thing as a shape. A shape is just one that meets a certain specification. So I can actually do the same thing to a shape, like this circle right here. And here you can see it has 4 points. And I can change these handles, like over the vector. You can get creative. I don't want to go outside of the scope of this, but you can do some pretty creative things and make some very useful shapes, stuff that might be very specific to your needs. But like here I can leave this with a rectangle and turn it into a triangle. Very cool. Okay, so here's the last thing I'm going to talk about. It is position, rotate, and flip. So I'm really just going to talk about this menu right here. So you see there's position, size, and transform up here in the top right. So let's say I want to change the position. I showed you how you can do it with the mouse. Another thing you can do is actually with the keyboard. I can move it 1 pixel by pressing up, down, left to right. Or if you hold shift, it'll move it 10 pixels in that direction. So that's useful, but you can also go into this position number, and you can numerically change it. So I can increase the value by holding up, decrease it by holding down, and same thing with shift. Left and right aren't going to work here because this is a text box, and you're literally just increasing or decreasing the number. So up and down on X would actually move it left and right, or right and left, excuse me. And with Y, it's the same thing, except it goes up and down. So another thing is you have these little up and down arrows in the text box. You can click them to incrementally do it. Oh, and shift clicking will do a 10. I didn't know that until right now, but I don't really use that very often. Anyway, so we're going to go to size. You have width and height. It's the same exact thing. The proportions are locked here, so it's keeping them. But if I turn that off, now it's going here. All right, and then there is transform. Transform has rotate and flip. Rotate is the number of degrees to rotate the object. So positive goes clockwise, negative goes counterclockwise, in spite of what you learned in trigonometry class. And next to it, oh, and you can do 10 at a time. just the same. Then we have flip. You can see the left, right, and the top, bottom. It's pretty clear from the icons. And that covers all of that. One last trick, this is a quick one, is when I have an object and I have it selected like this, maybe I don't want to drag it or get involved in these menus or anything. I just want to do it on the fly, do a quick change. So if you hold Command and press a direction, it will actually increase or decrease that value. So I'm actually going to unlock this one to demonstrate it more clearly. So what you're actually doing is moving the bottom edge or the right edge. So if I hold Command and press down, I'm pushing bottom edge down, so I'm expanding this object that much in that direction. Same with the right, and I can hold Shift and do the same. And that is a huge time saver, a shortcut. You can move this thing around and then make some changes. It's really one of the most useful things about Sketch. It's probably one of the biggest features that convinced me that this app is better than most others for this project, for this type of work. All right, that covers everything. I hope this is helpful. In our next video, we're going to talk about editing attributes. That means colors, borders, all that great stuff. Hope you liked it. Leave comments if this is helpful, and don't be afraid to request anything that I might not have talked about. Thank you.